Hi guys, and welcome back to TomTalks. Today we have got another Mercury Prize review. We're going to be talking about the third studio album from Sam Fender, which is People Watching. Now, Sam was nominated for his previous album, 17 Going Under, so not a big shock to see him here. He produced the record alongside Adam and Grandusseal, who is the frontman of The War on Drugs, Marcus Drabs, who worked on Wolf Alice's last album, Blue Weekend. The producers worked with Hosier, Florence the Machine, worked on Coldplay's Viva La Vida and Death and All His Friends, the new Last Dinner Party album that's about to come out. And then there's also production from members of his band, Dean Thompson and Joe Atkinson. No relation to me, of course. Atkinson worked on tracks on the last album. And this is a blend of Heartland rock, post-Britpop. And for context, it sold over 100,000 copies in its first week, and until Miss Swift released her new album, was the biggest debut of 2025 so far. And I think it was the biggest debut by a British artist since Harry Styles' last album came out. So a lot of people were excited for this record. Sam Fender is an artist whose music I've always enjoyed, but his influences are very clearly visible. Like, there is a lot of Bruce Springsteen influence in his music. And for the most part, I will say I do enjoy this record, but there are things that hold it back for me. So the first track here is the title track, which is this anthemic, very stadium-esque rock track with the plucky guitar and the piano and the very melancholic delivery. Sam, as a vocalist, is a good singer, and he has the ability to show off when is necessary, and I think he does vocally perform when it's the right time, and he does on the chorus here, and it gives it that bit of anthemic euphoricness which you want from a chorus. The track is very self-explanatory. He's watching people and it reminds him of his youth and not feeling alone in the world. His stardom has took him away from his roots, and maybe he feels a bit lost in a music industry that, especially today, is very predominantly middle class people or nepo babies, upper class people who are used to that industry, and maybe that coming home reminds him of where he comes from, but that also he isn't that person anymore. And these are themes that are echoed throughout the record, I will say. But the track here does focus on this nurse who was like a surrogate mother to him, who was overworked, and how this person has passed away and the feelings he feels. But it's a good single. I like the ooh-oohs on the post-chorus bit. I think that's used nicely. The saxophone on the second part of the post-chorus as well, and the violins on the bridge. The instruments come in on this track very well, and they just give it a little bit of a kick each time, just to give the track a bit of extra oomph. I do like this as a single. I feel like it's maybe not as impactful as some of the lead singles from the previous records, like 17 Going Under. And it maybe doesn't have the sort of newness that you felt when you listened to Hypersonic Missiles for the first time, which I guess wasn't technically the lead single, but was the first Sam Fender track I heard. I enjoy it. It's a good song, and I think there's interesting songwriting going on here. I just feel like with People Watching, it doesn't just hit as much as some of those other singles, but good song nevertheless. Then get Nostalgia's Lie, which is this more acoustic, a grungy sound coming from the guitar, a bit of an alt rock influence here as well. Very somber. There's a bit more high note delivery here from Sam. It's about, again, kind of following on from the themes of the last track, he doesn't recognise this place. It's very emotional in the delivery, from thinking back to his youth and missing friends and how some are no longer here. It's kind of like, I don't know whether it's touching on the fact that some people have left him because they don't see him as the same person. Maybe there's a bit of jealousy there. Maybe there's this aspect of, oh, maybe you think you're too good for us, which I don't get from the lyrics, but, you know, some people can sometimes think like that. And yeah, it's a good, it follows up nicely from people watching, and I think it does the job here. Chin Up is basically Sam kind of reflecting on his own self-loathing a bit, his own sort of depression, but then also kind of looking at how some of the people in his area are struggling with real issues and how he needs to keep his chin up and keep on going because his problems could be a lot worse here. The guitar is a lot more quickly strummed, the vocal delivery is a bit quicker, there's a pacey drum pattern to it, and I really like the use of the strings on the latter half as well, and Sam sounds really good vocally here. Another good track, another track where it's got some pretty good songwriting, keeps the flow of the album going nicely. We then get Wild Long Lie, which has a bit more of a folky sound. There's the banjo in here, it's quite quaint. There's some synths in there as well. And it's about Sam sort of having these conversations with his friends. Like there's references here to Boris Johnson in the police uniform and talking about the pain he felt in his past. And it's Sam kind of realising from this first stage of the album that he needs to like leave this feeling of like sort of harking back for something that's not there anymore maybe, and it's quite melancholic, but by the end Sam has come to the conclusion he needs to just get his stuff together. He'll always feel this like sorrow for the people who've in his past who haven't been able to come forward with him, but I think it's a nice closer to this sort of section of the album. We then get Arm's Length, which with the electric guitar, it's very anthemic, the simple drum beat, it very much feels like a single. I do really like the chorus where he's like, do you have to know me inside out? And then the wow, wow, and wow, 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 that little guitar riff, that is very nicely done. I do enjoy that. And it's basically Sam saying like, he just wants some company. He doesn't want to spill his deeper, inner, darkest thoughts here. He's just looking for something quite simple, which again, you know, I do. It's probably something that's been done. It's something that's been done before, but I think he does sell it well here. Again, and there's a use of the harmonica as Sam gives it his all on the vocal front here. It's a good single, and it's catchy, it's got passion there. It's, I guess, not one of... Do you know what? It's a very well-written song for a mainstream... It's not dumbed down, but it's very clear this was written to be a hit. Do you know what I mean? You should get what I mean. But it's a good song. I do enjoy this one. It's one of the standout. It's a standout at this point in the record. Crumbling Empire is very ballady. There's a fast drum guitar. Again, this very basic drum pattern. He's kind of reflecting on where he wouldn't be, where he'd be if he wasn't famous, and like talking about how like Thatcherite policies have crumbled the country and how the country has become this crumbling empire. Like the rail work where his dad used to work has been privatised. How, you know, people have been left homeless and the working class has been left behind. His Earl, this person who was thrown out, was on drugs and has sort of been left behind by society. It's one of the first tracks here where I was like, okay, this is a fantastically written song. Like, don't get me wrong, the stuff before this, good, well written. You can tell they're heartfelt, you can tell they're personal, and they make for good stories. But this was the first one where I was like, okay, we're getting to the good stuff here. So, Crumbling Empire, great track. A little bit closer, again, goes back to that more stadium, anthemic guitar sound. There's the harmonica in here. It talks about like how religion sometimes takes advantage of the poor and makes you feel wrong for questioning it in quite highly religious areas. I will say this is one of the weaker moments on the record because the chorus doesn't quite stick out as much here, and I just think instrumentally it's not as interesting. I think the topic is good. I think it's talked about in a very interesting way, and I think Sam gives a very, very thought out, very well delivered sort of theory on religion and how, like, he's not completely against it. He thinks there's good things in there, but he also thinks it takes advantage of people, particularly some of the poor people he's seen in his area. And yeah, and to some extent I agree. Like, I'm not a religious person myself, but I think there is good things in religion. I'm friends with religious people who are good people, and there are aspects of the religions that help them to become good people, but there's also aspects of religion that do take advantage of certain people. There is corruption, just like there is in all groups in society. But I don't know, just as a song, this just doesn't quite stick the landing. But I think there is some good songwriting on this track, I will say that. Rein Me In was one of the last singles. It's obviously got a lot more popular thanks to the Olivia Dean remix, which isn't here, but is definitely worth your time. It's one of the more stadium-y tracks with the oohs on the chorus. They're very folky strummed guitar and banjo. It's quite uplifting, it's finger clicking. Sam reminiscing on this past love and how it remains in his memories and the places he visits. And I love this line, all my memories of you ring like tinnitus. I think that's a really good line to sort of describe this person just being constantly on your head and like the pain it causes, the annoyance. Basically, he tells this story of how like he couldn't tell this person how he felt, but he's now telling everyone about how he effed up. It's like, yeah, it's kind of humorous, but it's not, if you know what I mean. It's a really good like reflection on like when you realise that someone, you could have had something with them, but you didn't quite go for it, and you're now regretting it. I've had a, there's been someone in the past who I liked and I didn't go for it, and everyone around me is like, this person probably did like you, why didn't you go for it? And you're just like, oh, damn, man. But you gotta move on. And Sam has moved on, and he's made a top 10 sequel from it, so I think he's doing all right. TV Dinner is Sam reflecting on the music industry and how it doesn't protect people. He uses the example of Amy Winehouse, like how people are held up as these like heroes. Like, I think specifically he talks about himself and how because he comes from a working class background, he's held up as, and also because there isn't that many big music stars that come out of Newcastle, he's, particularly in the mainstream, he's held up as this hero, but then the music industry and tries to tear you down. Really like when he sings Am I Up to This? You could really hear the sort of the questioning in his mind and the passion he delivers that line with. But he also kind of talks about how he hates how like the working classes are looked down upon by the music industry, by people in, it could be mean as well, by people in power. And it's a good track. It's a good commentary, and it's a good sort of discussion to be had, because you know, what happened to Amy Winehouse was really sad. The way she was treated by the press was also terrible. But that could have quite easily happened today, especially with stan culture and how toxic music discussion becomes and how sales based it becomes. I mean, I see on the internet the way that people talk about particularly female pop stars and female singers, and it's disgusting. So I think Sam here makes some good commentary here about how the music industry treats its singers and how it needs to do better even today. Something Heavy is this very folky acoustic guitar. He very much enunciates the high notes in his vocal all on this track. It's kind of about lovers who are broken but also carrying the burdens you feel and the sadness you feel. In a way, he talks about the effects of COVID, friends who've unfortunately have themselves, and how he's upset about not seeing the signs of that, and him and this person or metaphor, could be a metaphor, are basically like drinking themselves into oblivion because of just the sadness and depression. And yeah, it's again another track where he reflects on depression, but I think he does it in a very interesting way here, and I think it's a good penultimate track here. And then we close with Remember My Name, which I think is probably my favourite song on here. I think it's the one that stands out the most because of the very sad, direct delivery that Sam gives. The use of brass in here, the very melancholic sound, and the fact that this is basically a love story about his grandparents and how his grandfather has to visit his grandmother who has dementia and tries to jig a memory again with like stories of the past and of them together. And it's powerful, man. It's really powerful. Like when he says, I'll pray you remember my name, that really hits. It hits for me personally because I have a grandparent with dementia who's not quite at the stage that is being described here, but it's definitely something that's on your mind, and it's definitely something that my family's going to have to deal with at some point. And this track, it did make me, it did get me in my emotions, I've got to say. And it's a really good closer to the record, and it's some of the best songwriting on the record here. And I think instrumentally, the fact it was made to stand out also makes this a very good song. For the most part, this is a very good album. There's some really great songwriting here. I think the best songs tend to have the most interesting instrumentals. They might use a harmonica, they might use a saxophone, they might use some strings or some brass to bring out an element. Sam will do something different vocally, or he'll just write in a very good way. And I think Sam Fender's writing on this album is very good, I've got to say. It's very consistent. It's not always brilliant, but it's always good. And it always has a bit of purpose to it, or it has something catchy about it. But my main issue with this record is I feel like Sam Fender, while sometimes he does make things interesting instrumentally, I think there are some tracks where he does play it a bit safe. And it does mean when listening to this album, you do sometimes think, okay, I've heard this song before. Okay, this sounds very similar to the last album, the album before that. And I think when this album tries something different, it works nicely. But when it keeps things a bit formulaic on the instrumental front, it's a bit like, okay, let's try something different here. So for me, that holds the album back a bit, because I can't fault the songwriting, I can't fault the singing, and I can't fault the messaging and the poignancy and the emotion and the personalness of the record. But I just think instrumentally, Sam, he needs to try something a bit different on the next record. He needs to push himself a bit with the soundscape, and for me, because I think this kind of sound, he's probably pushed as far as it can go, and I just think he needs to try something different. Overall, I'm feeling about a 7.5 on this record. I enjoy this record, I think it's good, I love the storytelling, but I just think instrumentally it needs to vary itself up a bit. Thank you guys for listening to this review. It's a long one, but I hope you've enjoyed it. There was a lot to talk about with this record, particularly on the songwriting front. Let me know down in the comments, do you agree? Do you think I'm being too harsh here? What sort of soundscape would you like to see Sam Fender try on his next album? And do you think this has a chance of winning the Mercury Prize? It's certainly one of the biggest albums on the list. Let me know in the comments. Until next time, folks, this has been another Tom Talks.